Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Three Principles in Ireland community. And this is the Three Principles in Business. And we'd start off with a big thank you to Angelina, who's done all the background registrations, and it's Angelina's Zoom account. So thank you. And maybe we'll do a quick round of introductions of who are we and why are we here. And then we'll see what would be helpful for you guys and maybe give you a taste of the kind of things that we've done in business. And we can do a Q&A on all the things that we've screwed up on really badly and learn from, and maybe some of the things that worked. Jules, you want to introduce yourself? Jules can introduce herself in 3 or 4 languages because she's based in Germany, but she's going to use English for the purposes of this call. Right, Jules?
Yeah, my Gaelic is a little rusty, so it's, so hi everyone. It's a pleasure meeting you all, and I was super excited when Darragh and I, who worked together in a big IT corporation together with Greg, had the idea to share that with communities. 3 principal communities. I'm also in the German-speaking 3 principles community, and there's only a few people who are applying this into business. And it comes up, obviously, it comes with quite some challenges, but that's what I love about that. And I can really see that there is almost a hunger for people to see how the equipment, their mind, their consciousness and thoughts creates realities for themselves. And especially in the business context, there is almost this kind of barrier where they think, oh, that's too esoteric and it's just about my mind and stuff like that. But they see how well they navigate certain situations, being it as a manager, as a leader, as an individual contributor. So it's been a lovely experience over the last 4 years that we started to bring the principles into the work. And I'm really excited to share that with you, and also our F-ups and hiccups we've had along the way. But I think mostly it's been very well received. We've created a 3-day program, and we don't do any marketing for it. And our courses are all filled up. All the seats are filled up. We have wait lists all through word of mouth. And apparently because people see the impact of the knowledge, the understanding of the principles at work. So very, very nice to be here. And thank you so much for organizing this, Angelina and Darragh, and looking forward to hearing from you as well. Greg.
Thanks, Jules. Greg.
Thanks, Julietta. Hi, everybody. I think I know most people on this call. I certainly know the names, and I've spoken to some as well before. I also work with Darragh and Julietta in that big IT organization. I'd say my experience with the principles in the workplace is a little more personal to me than perhaps the program that Darragh and Julietta have put together themselves. Although it was great to be able to use the principles and because of prior knowledge about it, just to help them design that program or sense check maybe in the early days what they might include and what they might leave out for an audience, to in a workplace environment, for an audience to accept it. But since then, it's become much, much more, I suppose, widespread within our company. The people who have attended their workshop have really strong connections. I've attended some of their workshops and helped facilitate more recently. The connection between the people that attend is super, super strong. So that's just an initial observation, and hopefully we can talk about some of those examples here today as well. So that's me. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks, Greg. So maybe I won't do an Adam and Eve kind of introduction back to the very beginning, but to kind of put a little bit of a history together of the principles and the journey we went on to kind of get it up and running. And then we can do an experience or an experiment in a little bit in breakouts to give you a taste of how we go about things. So in about 2016, I did a program with Insight Principles, Ken Manning and Robin Charbot, who you may or may not have come across, but they've worked in businesses. And I got it immediately, or at least I thought I got it immediately, because I work in training and development, and like I've been running global programs for 20 years, design and delivering all sorts of training. And straight away I thought, oh yeah, I understand this. And I didn't really. But what happened was I saw something, and my insight was there's a difference between being in the content or being content. So I had this I saw in the program, okay, if there's a feeling of being content and then there's a feeling of being in the content of my thinking. And I was running it was a sales academy, or a business school. We had different the owners, we had salespeople, we had pre-sales people. We started to experiment with things like listening, watching what was going on, and we started to change. Myself and Manuel, a colleague, started to change. And then COVID hit, and I was pulled off that project and into another one. And myself and Julietta were asked to take a 2-week face-to-face program in California and convert it into something virtual. And we had this conversation where I think, don't take this the wrong way, Jules, but Jules was freaking out, going, "What are we going to do? We've got from bringing people to one place and teaching them stuff to now having to do it online." And I was like, well, let's see what makes sense to do. And Jules, you want to share your part of that story?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I wasn't really exposed to the principles in any sense or way, but what I've understood when Darragh was sharing, when you are in this, and excuse my language, when you are in this fuck state, your state of mind just lowers the mood and you're just not receptive to anything. And he kind of pointed me towards that reality that I was creating in my mind. And somehow he then started sharing the role of state of mind and as how important it is to be aware of that. And then we managed to kind of become more productive without having, Darragh wasn't mentioning mind, consciousness, thought, or anything around the principles. We were basically just talking about state of mind and what different states we're in the business world. And we were dealing with sales managers who were now told, we don't know what's going to happen. You have to manage your teams remotely now. And by the way, you're going to have to do a 1-week course virtually. So we thought, okay, so a lot of negativity, a lot of unknown, a lot of insecurity, a lot of fear. And then we thought, let's create something that is different, that is a little bit more loose. And this is where we started to implement the state of mind, just to create this mere awareness for managers to also see, oh, this is where I am right now. And this is where my people are. And COVID, just shortly after it hit, it was already such a long time ago, right? So we don't even remember and recall how that was. But we basically all freaked out, having to work from home, no change management. We were just there trying to save the world in all this insecurity. And then I started to do that training with Ken and Robin, and we developed a program called the VUCA Prime Leader, because VUCA was like this volatile business world, insecurity. How do we deal with that as a leader? And we called it the VUCA Prime Leader, infusing parts of whatever we both thought we got intellectually. And then along this ride, we started to realize more and more for ourselves and having some insights around how we can make this even a bigger thing. And it was I think it was 3 times 2 hours, right? That we did, Darragh? Was it a short?
It was 4 times 2 hours.
2 hours, yeah. And people enjoyed it. They kind of they felt heard. They felt, oh yeah. So there's a different or a deeper dimension of understanding that I can tap into. And still within the pandemic, I did my advanced course with Ken and Robin. And then I said, Darragh, we should do this 3 days. And he was like, are you crazy? We'll never get approval for this. And I said,
I was like,
well,
that's never going to work.
That's never going to happen. That's never going to work. We're not going to get approval. We're not going to get people. And here we are. We made it. So 3 days it is. And we tell people before we even start, we do a 1 hour briefing call. And we tell them, this course is between you and you. So if you feel committed to yourself to invest these 3 days in your development and your growth, then come. If you're not committed to yourself or not committed to the time, come another time and don't come at all. And that's what makes people go like, oh, something's interesting, something's intriguing here. And we're not married to the fact of doing it for 3 days, but we see the time is actually what is needed for them to find that space, to find that awareness, that wisdom that everybody carries within themselves innately. And what also Greg mentioned, it's always a bunch of complete strangers. We ask them to bring whatever they want to bring to the table, and we give them the time to play with it. But always on day 3, it's always tears. It's always so much connection between these complete strangers. And that's what they kind of get out with. And they said, these 3 days are needed. We need it. We needed it. So it is a high cost investment for a company to say, I'm going to take my people out of whatever job they're doing for 3 days. But the impact of that is beautiful. It's just nice to see, and how people really, they always come back day 2. It's like, yeah, this makes all sense. This is logical. Makes complete sense. How do I apply this? That's always the question we get. How do I apply this in my daily jobs? And this is where the art comes in, where we try to point them into whatever it is that they need to apply, is there. So there is no doing in that. But we are all so programmed that it's a doing, it's a making, it's a hard work, it's an effort. And after these 3 days, they somehow get out and like with a little bit more of a trust in taking that leap of faith to seeing, maybe I already have it in me. Not sure if that was too far away fetched, Darragh. But...
No, that's good. That's kind of brings us up to today. So what's different from working in a business context versus a principles context at a high level is that we're all bought in to some extent, right? We've all got some experience of the principles, or we've all seen something, or we're interested, or we like people, or we like coaching and so on. In a business context, one of the things we had to play with was, we don't call it a principles program. So we call the program Mastering Change, Leading at a Deeper Level. And when we ask people, what attracted you to this? What made you come? It varies. Initially it was kind of like, I want to be a master of change. There's so much change going on, and I want to do that. Or sometimes people say, there's just something about the deeper level thing. Like, I know I've been missing stuff. So they have this level of curiosity in how you get the message out. So before we had a community, we have about 300 people who've been through the program now, and our word of mouth is really good. But the starting point to that was, we experimented in the VUCA Prime Leader with a naming convention. We didn't like that, but our boss loved VUCA Prime. He thought this is the thing, you know. We didn't like the name at all. We wanted to go to something else. But we had to kind of like say, well, we'll give them that, but then we'll kind of build in what we think makes sense for people. And one of the ways of telling the story about the impact of the principles is to try and localize it in the world of the person that you're talking to. So at the time of COVID, a lot of managers were used to managing face to face or walking around the office and hearing people on sales calls. And they had a level of reassurance about that, that they knew activities were happening and people were doing things. But then when it went to remote work, they couldn't see that and they freaked out. So their own thinking would drive them nuts. They'd go, I don't know if are they doing the thing they're supposed to be doing and all that kind of thing. I care about them, but mostly I'm worried, have we got enough pipeline? So then they'd set up calls with people, more and more calls. And of course, the people then would kind of go, this guy's a micromanager. He's driving me nuts. So they would stop showing up on calls or stop turning their camera on. And that would make the manager make even more calls and be even more aggressive in the few calls they turned up on. So when you kind of point out the problem in their experience, then it's not a big step to go, well, the state of mind you're in is creating most of the problems that you're having. So wouldn't it be good to reverse engineer from that so that you don't manage the wrong thing, but you have a different level of understanding of yourself? So that was the kind of the logic we went about it at the time. And I was doing a master's in leadership transformation at Middlesex University at the time. So I researched how we built that program and wrote a thesis on it to kind of see how it got going. And these were the kinds of things that, bridging from the real world problems that people had, the connection to how their mind was working, and then making that into conversations and running experiments about it, so that most people in business are intelligent, they're very skeptical, they're often time starved. So to get them to kind of slow down enough to kind of get engaged, you respect them, that they think for themselves, that they like to gather their own evidence, and that they like to see how it would make a difference for them in their world. And there's some level of, I would say, domain expertise or business understanding that makes people effective with the principles in business, which is a craft. It's not about grounding. Like, grounding is super important, but there's also this ability to get into their world and understand it enough to see where they're having challenges, where you could be relevant for that, and then create messaging that allows them to connect to that enough. Now, the VUCA Prime kind of program, 4 sets of 2 hours, we learned a lot on, because we thought we knew it, and then we overthought everything. Right?
It was intellectual, right? We were sharing our intellect.
And we'd be going, what are we going to do next? Like, where are they? Is this the group this here? And that was all our insecurities kind of going, like, they have to get it. It's on us to get it. And we learned over time, some conversations create more confusion than clarity. An example being state of mind. We stopped using it because straight away people are in a good state of mind or a bad state of mind. So they spend all the time in the content of their thinking about what's good and bad, instead of seeing the fact of thinking. So it got stuck at a level. So then we could see these things happening, and then in the 3 days we had a lot more kind of time, and we learned to say up front to people, don't come. If your expectations are the 3 magic bullets that are going to get you 2 hours in your life, don't come. It's not for you. You're not ready for it. And sometimes if you say you're not ready for it, people are like, no, I really am. And you go, we really don't think you are. And we learned, because sometimes people came and they didn't get very much because their expectations were off, and we didn't have the guts to kick them out. But then we could see, actually, it's not about guts or anything like that. It's just about seeing, this there's a disjoint here between what you think you want and what you think you're going to get and what you think that's going to do for you versus what we're going to do. So we, in the briefing, explain really, really clearly what we're going to do for the 3 days. Day one's about you. Day two is about you with others. Day three is about results. This is how it's going to run. This is all the cameras on. This is the commitments that's expected. Do it at home. Don't do it in the office. So we set out and say, like, if you decide not to come, good. We're happy, because then we get the right group of people in the room. And like Jules said, we've had people from, we've done 40 of them now, like the 40 or so of the 3-day things. We've had people from India, China, South America, Eastern Europe, all over Europe, all ages, all levels in the company, from chief business officers down to, students who are in for 6 months. And the fantastic thing about the principles is they're the same for everybody. So it puts everybody into the same level of philosophical looking at the universal human nature. And from that sameness comes this feeling of connection, and people go, I wasn't expecting to come out of this with a friend or a mentor, or I didn't. All these people have the same problem as me. I thought it was just me. Now, I think we're talking far too much. Let's do a quick check-in and see, what are you hearing, or what questions or things do you have on your mind that made you sign up for this thing and go, this looks like a good idea? How can we be helpful?
I'm happy to kick off.
Great. Thanks, Eve.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Myself and Ian were in the car on the way back, and then there was a bit of moving around. So he's heading off somewhere. For me, it's the language, and I've raised this a few times. I raised it with Dickon, and I raised it with Michael Neal a few times. It's the language that we use, and you've touched on it already, which is great. The language that we use in order to pitch a product. So I'm talking very corporate speak there, but it's actually, there's a veil that I see when I go deep. On a one-to-one basis, it's great, but actually when you're talking to somebody and you're trying to make that intro and do something a little bit different, it just seems to shift. And I find the same thing in the breathwork coaching. And for me, and Michael Collins has just left there, for me, the two are completely aligned, like they dovetail perfectly. So that's what I'd love to see today, a little bit of that type of thing.
So it's, we had a call earlier this week, Jules and I, with a very senior stakeholder, and they said, don't give me anything woo-woo or fluffy.
Yes, that's what I mean. Right? Yeah.
And this is very common. And then they said, send me something.
Yeah.
So we decided not to do that. Right? Because nobody buys a product. They buy a solution to their problem. And it's not a question of your language, it's a question of the timing in when somebody's looking for something. Right? So what we decided to do was offer them help to solve their problem. We're not selling the principles. That's going to underpin everything we do. But we show rather than tell, and we just start helping them. In a really grounded place. So what we basically said is, look, we can see you are very busy-minded, carrying a lot of pressure. There's a lot of hard measures that you have to hit, resourcing constraints that you've got. So why don't we help you with that? And then after, when that's not on your plate, we can have a discussion about other things. But really, it's like, They don't know what value you're putting on the table until they can see it in their context. And if you start banging on about breath work and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
they'll go, I don't have time.
Yeah.
Like that's fine for somebody who's not as busy as me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, it depends on the business stakeholder, right? If you're talking to somebody in HR who's got a well-being KPI, they might love that. But a lot of the people we're talking to are not in that world.
Yeah, and same actually, and it's funny. I loved the timing of this call because I haven't approached the breath work because I know I can only drip feed it at the moment. That's my gut around it, and I like what you've said. So I really appreciate that. You go in, it's kind of going in the back door. So that's which is approaching it a different way and just using the three principles style in the work that you're doing.
Because you can't help but the principles work for you if you've seen something about it.
Yeah.
It's going to come out. But Jules, you look like you're going to come in on this. Yeah. So what's on your mind? We'll come to you in a minute. Thank you.
We've been really, and I'm a simultaneous translator. I'm a translator by trade. So for me, it's always about translating it and trying to get the message across so that the person really gets it. And what was quite helpful in the term of selling the program, at least internally to our manager, because I mean, it was a leap of faith for him to let us do that. And he always insisted, you need to be more concise, you need to be more business. So we started to use, not a metaphor, but we always wrote on the top results. And there's behaviors that lead into results, right? So, and this is where corporations often just limit themselves to. So you need to change your behavior. Exactly. Thank you, Darragh. In order to achieve X, Y, Z. That's the level that is visible, logical, tangible. It's real. It feels real. But we never tend to see the level of thought and feeling, which basically, or the beliefs behind that, right? At the bottom of it, because it's invisible, it's intangible, it doesn't feel real. It feels very real when you enter a room and you sense everybody's in a bad mood, right? So you see the feeling in the room is off. So we try to bring this metaphor up and to say, well, if you want to, and that it only works one way, right? So whatever I feel, what I think is what makes me behave and achieve X, Y, Z. But we in corporation limit ourselves to only the visible part, kind of like the iceberg principle, right? And this is what resonates a lot with people in the language where they go, okay, so if that hasn't helped me, and if that is not sustainably changing whatever change I try to communicate, whatever thing I want my people to do, is I need to get down a level. That's what we call it, transforming or leading at a deeper level, because this is the level that you have to be responsive to and aware to. And that might also help in articulating that in a little bit more logical way, because it really resonates with people. And it also shows, okay, you've been doing that for a while. It hasn't worked. So maybe it's worth the while to have a look at the bottom of things, right?
And sometimes they don't know what they mean, right?
Yeah, totally.
So I was asked to do something before with leaders on accountability. So I said, like, let me just ask and see if this is hitting the mark. Your definition of accountability is how do we blame somebody when things go wrong, right? And then you're wondering, how can I get people to accept that? Really, what you want to do is change the feeling, right? So you have a feeling of frustration because people aren't owning something that you want them to feel ownership about. So actually what you're after is a change of feeling for you and a change of feeling for them so that they feel ownership. So you're using the language of accountability to express a feeling of frustration. And when you ask people, tell me more, when you say accountability, what do you actually mean? Very often behind it is the feeling. And if you look at where feelings come from in the principles, is their thinking. they think they're feeling the world, but they're feeling their thinking. So if I'm saying my team have an accountability problem, really what I'm trying to get across sometimes is I'm feeling frustrated because I think that they aren't doing what they told, right? And that's what they want help with. They just don't know how to articulate that because they are using their intellect or the world of form to try and convey something that's formless. So when you are listening for language, it's not always on you to come up with language. It's on listen for the feeling behind what somebody's trying to convey and then get curious about it. And you'll see something about it that they're not seeing, probably in relation to a feeling. And then you go, oh, so if we could work to change the feeling in your team around owning things, would that be helpful for you? What would the impact of that be, do you think? And we came up with some questions. Like we worked with a group and we asked, are your meetings alive or dead? Right? Because a lot of Jules, you want to tell the story about that?
I think I would love to hear about what Victoria has to say.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, we'll do that.
Actually, just before that, Darragh, you showed something, but I was listening so intently that I didn't see what you showed. So it was results, behaviors, feelings, and
that's thinking. You could have beliefs or whatever they're either. But basically, this is the visible world that business usually manages.
Yeah.
But the and you'll have behavioral change programs.
Yeah.
And to challenge that, like it's kind of a reinforce the right behaviors. Do you want to be reinforced or do you want to be the reinforcer?
Yeah. Thank you.
People don't think about the effect of language. So, Victoria, apologies. You've been waiting.
Thanks for patience. Thank you for that.
No problem. Thanks for asking.
Hi, everyone. Thanks to call me out. I just raised my hand because I also try to share this in my workplace, but I have something happened this week in the workplace where I'm working, and I just wanted to share that I am not in the training and development department of the company where I am working at the moment, but I would like to share, and I was struggling, or I'm struggling, and have lots of insecurity and lots of expectation that this will change everything. Like I think everyone else falling into the same trap at the beginning. But I try to calm myself down and says that, okay, I can't force people to hear me, or I can't. Even I know that how beneficial is this. And like Darragh or Greg, I also doing my master thesis around the 3P and how that affects people, stress management in the workplace or workplace related stress. I'm so excited about it, but I'm at the beginning of my process. But, I try to stay open in conversation and communication. And previously I said that I have to find someone who might be interested about this. And I told my manager, and okay, I try to. You can share it, ask someone else, and maybe you can make a webinar. But he wasn't absolutely excited about it. And I say, okay, so let's see something else. And I just waiting and kind of give up, like you hearing stories that you give up and you say, okay, so maybe it's not here or not this time. And last week I saw an email, what was an invitation to another workplace well-being program. And first I didn't pay attention. But after that I said, okay, who was that person? Maybe I can talk with him. And I checked the cancellation email, and at the end of the email there was something what's picked my attention, that if you have any idea, anything, something new, just reach out. And I reached out, and he invited me to talk about what I would like to share. So in that well-being group. So I think that that's kind of how it works nearly every time, that when we stop efforting and stop try to doing things will happen. And then another person also reached me out because we started together 6 months ago, and he wasn't in a nice mood in a certain point, and we met in the kitchen and we started to talk. And I kind of calmed him down, or offered some just listening, just offer that you can tell me anything, and it's a safe place with me. And he also called me this week and invited me to talk with his team, because he feels that the mental well-being is so important. So I said that what is going on, that when I gave up to efforting and just be, people find me. It's still nothing happened. It's just the possibilities there. That, and maybe on these meetings when I try to share and don't be so intellectual and don't give too much expectation to the sharing, because that's where I always find myself, that I expect that people will enlightenment in 5 minutes, and that's we go to the heaven, and whatever it means for them, it's that way, and is accept just be me and share what I know, and there will be always someone who listen or to hear, or maybe not now, but it will land it later. I think it's just we as a human beings, and especially us, or anyone who listen or felt in any kind of training or information help. We just try to share it because we know that it's so helpful, but we are different. So I think that we just have to be patient with ourselves and with others, and don't rush.
It's a nice realization. And, you know, we're lucky, right? How it works actually for us is, I think it's really helpful to work with other people, because myself and Jules, she mutes me when I talk too much sometimes for the laugh, right? Or when I get stuck in my head and in my intellect and I start explaining things, and vice versa. And it's really helpful, because sometimes you'll think, oh man, this is never going to work. And I've thought that, and Jules has gone, no, let's give it a try. And now we've got people in the community. It's good to kind of have a level of trust that the principle of mind is working. It's also nice on the level of craft to partner up with somebody. It can be hard to do it on your own, but so what happened, our team was, I got infected, Julietta got infected, and one by one, they all got infected, and it ended up with our manager coming to our program. And then he had a profound insight about one of his relationships. And I was talking to him on Monday, and he was like, but it took him like probably 2 years of hearing other people do it. But then he had to be open to have his subordinates to be in the care of that. And that this is the way it works. It's like, you don't have to effort it, but there's a kind of an infection in a positive way, if you stay grounded. That's how I see it. So take the pressure off you doing it. Just be grounded. Just a little bit of help to your colleague. They start to get infected, and then it'll build, and then you'll see what's next. It's just that we all want to be there right now. We'd love to have this right now and have this principles program up and running, but it's a level of patience.
There was this one Sydney Banks video where he said, I didn't picture myself doing this for different people worldwide. And here he was traveling the world, right? Not even having the funds to do that in the beginning. And because he wasn't attached to the outcome, and not being attached to the outcome has been also a really good realization for both of us as a team, because we got split it. So we're not working in the same team anymore. And we are basically still offering this program because we see the impact of that. We believe in it and we see that it's good. And obviously it's not for everybody. The right time is not there for everybody. It's like you read a book again after 10 years, you read a completely different story because your levels of awareness are completely different. And that's where we also had this massive realization that, yes, it's not for everybody. Yes, the time is not for everybody. It's not the right thing. And now we're, kind of like hanging in the air because the organization is undergoing a massive transformation. But we're both not feeling attached to any outcome. We just know this is what we want to continue to do, to bring this understanding into the business world, because it is very powerful.
And it's the forum. You just don't be attached to the forum. The forums come and go. Is to have a level of playfulness and see what emerges, because there's always growth. You're always outgrowing. It's part of wisdom. Jan.
Hi, everyone. First of all, let me say I was thrilled to see the topic for today. So that's why I'm here. I run a HR consultancy in Cork, so I'm self-employed. I do coaching and training as part of that, but the main body of my work for many years has been conflict resolution. So I spend a lot of time doing workplace investigations, mediations, that kind of thing. And when I kind of got my bearings with this understanding, it really became apparent to me that an ounce of prevention would go a long way with these kinds of issues. So now I'm trying to pivot more towards culture change than the conflict resolution. To what you were saying, Darragh, it's seeing the problems and offering a solution, or a way around it. I don't talk about the three principles. I did in the beginning, and I learned very quickly that was not lending at all. People were just glazing over. But when you just talk about practical problems and solutions and point people towards what's going on in their own mind, that does help people. Where I'm curious is, as Julietta said, there is a readiness thing. So not everybody is ready, not everybody is interested. And as I'm moving into this cultural change work, I'm working with teams of people now, rather than the people that are in conflict with each other. And some people are open to it, and some people are not. And that's okay. The people that get it, and the people that don't. And what's interesting is that for some of my clients that I've been with a bit longer, I'm starting to see two things happen. The people that weren't ready at the time of the intervention, for want of a better term, are either self-selecting out of the organization, or they're starting to get curious themselves, which is fascinating to watch that happen. Where I'm still facing a challenge is with the unions, because a lot of this cultural shift involves unions, which is fine. But what I'm finding is the paradigm I'm meeting is blame, punishment, right, wrong, good, bad. You can't blame people for what's happening in their world. I'm challenged to find the language with that particular cohort of people, and I haven't found it yet. So that's what I'm curious about today.
So a variation on the principles. We don't do pure principles because we keep learning, right?
Yeah.
Roger Mills, the psychologist who worked in Modelo, he had a definition of ego as insecure thinking taken seriously. Right, so ego isn't an entity; it's thoughts in the moment that we make real and take seriously, and we identify with them. Or we identify with those thoughts, which is another way of identity. So if my identity as a union official is as the protector of a certain population, then my feeling coming from my thinking will be defend, protect, attack, and defend, right? And in the moment, Dick and Bettinger's metaphor of this, your mind is either like gripped or open, is that in a healthy relationship, I'm not in identification and neither are you. Right? There's an openness and our minds can meet and there's a feeling of connection. And there's a feeling of disconnect when it's me versus you.
Yeah.
Or attack and defend. So the thing that makes most of it kind of go like this is is the outside in. So coral reefs.
Yeah.
You see that like the coral, and a diver comes along and just touches it, and it all shrinks in. Yeah, that's kind of a metaphor for the minute you touch something that people see as at stake around their identity, you're going to have this straight away. So to open up the people in their aliveness in the moment is, on one level, is to understand that it's inside out. That's the ideal state. But most people aren't there yet. So a proxy that we play with sometimes is around being stuck in your thinking. So we have people, reflect about a time that somebody was completely stuck and they really thought they were right and they really thought it was true, but you could see that it wasn't, right? And then we bring them back from a breakout or whatever, and we say, now a time when you were stuck in your thinking, right? And you really thought it was one way, but somebody could see something else. And then you can extrapolate that out to all these other situations, right? And it's the aliveness in the moment that's the thing. Because most of the time people can see it. They just don't know what to do about it. And they don't know what to do about it because they're identified with their thinking or being right or proving, or they're on the hook for the outcome. And that looks like a really good idea in an outside-in world. So where we get there with people is we might use language around ego and dropping egos, or we might do, is it alive or dead? Is this meeting alive or dead, or is it stuck or is it moving? And play with different kind of metaphors and then point out, this is something I think we're learning too, is to point out, you seem really stuck there, or you seem really entrenched in that view, like you feel really strongly about that, and behind it there'll be an innocent kind of thing, which is, I really want to defend the people, right? So as long as you're judging, there's no movement. It's like this: if I judge the unions as a problem, then they're going to be like this, and the employer is going to be like this. So it's creating a space to open it up so it's a little bit like this, and this is part of the craft and the art. And you could use your existing conflict resolution type of approach, but then bring in some principles stuff to start them opening up and open up the feeling there. That's how I'd see it. But I don't know if that makes any sense.
Compassion to the table, maybe.
And that can be a hard one, right? Because that can be a long way away from, I don't need to have compassion for them. They need to stop screwing things up, right? It's more like a kind of a negotiation where the better outcomes can be got for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Greg, you've been very quiet, and you look like you were kind of.
Yeah, I just thought of something there. Like you kind of mentioned it when you said Jan should use her conflict resolution skills and some of her past background. It would certainly come in very handy there. But the inside out metaphor that you shared is very important. But again, Jan, not Jan. Jan, if you're a little like Eve and you only use certain words, or perhaps it's inside out is too vague, or maybe it's too, it may not work up front. You might want to look at just simple things like listening skills and perspective. So even if the union know that you're going to call them out a little bit about seeing things from their own perspective all the time, even if you just make them a little bit more self-aware, if that's possible, rather than just judging straight away what they hear from the employer and looking at the employer all the time, just consider their own perspective. And what, so they notice that they judge sometimes, So that might give a little bit of resistance to them and hold them back a little. So, and then the listening and the engagement and the connection might grow from that. So you don't have to call it inside out. But if they're looking from their own perspective, it is inside out. They're coming from themselves and looking out and giving the other person space to describe and explain what their perspective looks like. Yeah. So.
Let's maybe do a quick exercise. Yeah. So, Jules, are you like setting up pairs in breakouts?
Pairs?
So, yeah. So rather than being theoretical about stuff, like we prefer to be experiential. So we're going to put you in a breakout with one other person, and your job will be the person with the longer hair of the two will convince the person with the shorter hair to stand up out of the chair, right? So you'll have 3 minutes and you convince the other person to stand up out of the chair. And you can use whatever you want, like whatever you think will work. Now, we're not really interested in the result here in a way. What we want you to do is look at what's going on in your head while you're trying to convince the person. And if you're the person who's being convinced, what's going on in your head, right? And don't make it hard or easy. Treat it like it's kind of, if you're convinced, stand up. If you're not, don't. Right? Very simple exercise. So the person with the longer hair convinces the person with the shorter hair to stand up out of the chair. You've got 3 minutes, and just watch what's going on in your head. Sound okay? Okay, so we'll see you in 3 minutes.
Greg, I'm adding you to the group because otherwise we won't be even. I hope that's okay. Good.
Greg's got the shortest hair, so somebody will convince him anyway.
Easy to
Well, what happened?
Greg standing.
Did anybody stand up?
I managed to get Greg to stand, which was surprising for me because I went into it full of, oh my God, how do I do this? So yeah.
So what happened, Angela? What did you do, or what?
Well, after I got out of my head, after all the thing of like, oh my God, where do I start? How do I do this? Or even just, I hate these situations. And then I just thought, well, you said potentially, that if they want to do it, and I thought, well, I'll ask him would he like to do it, and I used the idea of we've been sitting for an hour and, maybe it might be nice to just get up and move and shift a bit of energy and stuff. And Greg was happy to do that. So, yeah.
So how long into the 4 minutes before you set up, Greg?
About 2.5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. Pretty quick.
How about others? How long did it take?
We just have a connect call because Ian is in the car, so it was hard to. But we never met before, so we started to talk.
You don't want him
Sorry.
standing up in the car either. No problem.
I'm glad to hear you didn't get him to stand in the car. He would have been a bit dangerous.
Even with a sunroof.
Yeah.
We agreed very quickly that he will not have to stand up.
And you were okay with that, Victoria?
Yeah, I was okay with
And
he was also okay. And my daughter made me stand up. So it's the universe wanted.
That's nice.
Trust the universe. There you go. Trust your wisdom. It's just happening.
So
and, yeah, you had your hand up too.
Me, is it? Yeah. So interestingly, I could feed into what Jan was saying earlier. I was stubborn as a mule. I was just like a toddler. It's like once I was told to stand up, I was like, no, I'm not doing that. And I found myself and Louise's conversation then went off the whole topic of standing up. And I had more of an urge to stand up for her in that moment when I wasn't being asked. Now I did in the end because we're friends and, you know, let's be nice. But there is that of being told what to do. It's like, nah, I'm not doing that.
So where did the decision to stand up occur? Did it occur in your head or in Louise's conversation?
No, in my head.
Right. It's the only place it can occur, right? Yeah. Yeah. So sometimes these obvious things get missed. So we had 2.5 minutes. And you stood up at the end, Angelina, or when?
Oh, yeah. When we got the sign that there was 15 seconds left in the breakout room, I decided it'd be nice. Yeah.
Right. So we have almost a 50% improvement in efficiency in the Angela Greg conversation. This is the Louise Angelina conversation, right? So you can see, even in a simple exercise like this, what Donald had a question here about metrics. Now, businesses all love metrics, right? And we have metrics. We have people who were promoted. One of the biggest deals that was done in one of the market units, they said wouldn't have closed if it wasn't for being able to keep their cool under pressure, which they attributed to the program. So we can put money on the end of the stuff. Now, we didn't teach them the selling skills, but they could see the value for themselves, and then that story gets told. Well, I had a deal with 2 board members involved. There was all these kind of senior stakeholders, CFO, CEO, there was the chairman of the board. They were all involved. And in the past, I'd have freaked out and felt like an imposter. But I just kept my cool. I could see what was going on, and it closed the biggest deal in the market unit. And they tell people. So in a way, we don't have to have metrics. So what we've done here is a little exercise. We can point out how inefficiently we do things. So the simplest thing here is get into a feeling of connection and go, would you mind standing? This is a stupid exercise in a stupid training program, and we've been tasked to do it. No problem. 10 seconds. Up. Save 3 minutes. Now, you can imagine the number of conversations you're having that are inefficient, and how much, if you could see what was going on in your head was in the way, would help. Right?
It just landed on me. Sorry, that's what you try to show with this exercise. And I was smiling. Oh my God. That how we fight against what to do, and it's just the people think stand up, and they say, no, I will not stand up. And I said, why not? Just stand up.
And Jan, you can see this is your union in microcosm, right? Is Angelina, if you tell me to stand up, there's no fucking way I'm standing up. I'm going to do it in my decision. So we have been taught to go into our library of intellectual tactics and go, find the pain and crank it up. Like sitting's the new smoking. It's very unhealthy. Do you need to go to the toilet? When was the last time you had coffee? People are brilliantly inventive at pulling out all these strategies, or they kind of go like, oh, I'd love to stretch. Would you like to stretch? Or show me what's out the window of your room. Right. So people get into all this creative stuff, but the simplicity of connect and ask doesn't really occur to them, and it creates a lot of inefficiency.
I have another great example from an early talent who I did this with a group of young professionals who have just joined the sales force. So they're pretty intimidated by these ways to go about interviewing the customer. And, they're trusting of these senior account executives that whatever they're doing is what I need to do too. So, but they are also seeing that there's a lot of bad habits that they are inheriting and copying from these account executives, senior account executives, because they think of themselves as not good enough to be there. So I did this exercise with that team. And one of the young fellows just said, this is mind-blowing, because if I put myself into a customer situation and I observed all these last interactions, none of those senior account executives ever asked a question. What they did was just download, this is what we do, this is what you need to understand, dear Mr. Customer. So it was very one-directional. And this exercise gave him this insight almost. I will ask questions. Hey, dear Mr. Customer, what would it take you to get up? What is it that you need to achieve? And he did that. He did that in the future. And he even gave me another message saying, this works so much better because I get so much more information out of this customer rather than downloading my stuff on him. So this exercise points to a capacity that we have, and we have all this intellect, which it serves us a great deal. And we're not saying don't ever, make use of this capacity, but there is so much more. There's a vast ocean of options once you realize for yourself to be more curious about your customers, your peers, whatever situation or person you're encountering in. And that's what this exercise truly points to, connection. And this is how you create a connection to a customer, to another human being, because that's where the sale happens. It doesn't happen at a different level.
So the reason to kind of show a little exercise like this is that we think it's on us, right? So a lot of the principals community think if I share my story in a heartfelt way, then somebody will connect with that and fall into it. And that will work in principals communities, right? In business, because the principles are just the way it works, everybody has mind, everybody has consciousness, and everybody has thinking. We try and set up situations where people run an experiment and see for themselves and gather their own data from their own experience. For the same reason as Angelina said, I'm not going to stand up unless I want to stand up. And if you tell me to stand up, that's a no, right? And just giving people the opportunity to look at their own experience for themselves and share what they already see for themselves is what Jules is saying. They'll see something. And you just keep pointing at the role of the mechanics, the role of thought, the role of mind, the role of consciousness before the form, and playing with that. Because once they start to see something, then you stop teaching because there's nothing to teach. You're just pointing out what's alive and true right now. So we try and be descriptive of what's happening right now, And sometimes people go, how do I apply this? And we go, that's none of our business. Your mind is your mind. You convince somebody to stand up. The more you can get a feeling of connection, the more efficiently you can get somebody to stand up in 1 minute or 30 seconds instead of 4 minutes. The more you can see that what's going on in the moment, the more you can bring alive something in possibilities. And the logic of that stacks up. So even if you have engineers or practical business leaders, a lot of them know there's a problem. You know, my meetings are dead. I turn up with a PowerPoint and I'm talking, but there's nothing happening in the heads of people. And you go, well, what do? I race through it as quickly as possible to give people back time. And that's because I'm afraid to open it up for questions. I'm afraid of being challenged on my authority. I'm afraid of, I don't know how to deal with the aliveness of people. So when you get them to play in an experiment with their aliveness and see it, they already are seeing most things anyway. It's just that they have the attribution problem that it's the outside that's the problem, as opposed to I'm feeling my thinking in the moment. So we don't tend to send metrics to people. We'd rather turn up and put them on the spot and do something like this with them, and then point out, like the efficiency question. Look to, if you're that inefficient in 4 minutes, just think of every one-to-one. Just think of every team meeting. Just think of every meeting with your customers. There's a huge opportunity for improvement. So it's them thinking for themselves about their own situation that convinces them to do something for them if they want to do something for them. And that's none of our business.
But that's exactly what makes the sales so hard, right? And we were incredibly lucky. We were just exchanging that idea while you guys were in the breakout, because we had a great manager who gave us that trust, that autonomy to do that. And now we're just continuing this in a way that we are able of doing it. But we were lucky in the sense that we really had the space, the time to do that. And that's not given everywhere, Angelina.
Now, yeah, go for it, Angelina.
So I suppose that's my question to you. So there's people on courses who actually don't want to be there, but they've been told for whatever reason, this will be good for you. And that my struggle is that buy-in. Now, the current manager who has come to me, I know she likes being in the energy that I'm in. I know she likes being in the feeling. And I also know that she has heard nothing because I haven't shared a whole lot with her. And one day in our parenting course, something came up about worry. And I basically said, it's all made up. And I may as well have fell flat on my face because nobody got it. And she intervened and goes, but we all worry. That's part and parcel of life. So this is my, I suppose, debate at the moment. So I have no idea how to go in. I see all these parents, especially of special needs kids. I see the struggle. I hear what it is. And I suppose for me and my background, I have an understanding of it. But I don't know how to go in with this in such a way that there's buy-in and that it will actually help people, because there's no point me going in and rabbiting on and them getting nothing from it.
So one of the things is take the pressure off yourself knowing the answer, right? Is that because you can't control who shows up in that situation, but you can create an experience with the people in the room, not for the people in the room or not to the people in the room, but with the people in the room. So one of the other things that we play with is not principles related, but is a principle. Is Milton Erickson was a master of change, right? And he basically said, how do you use everything in its most useful way? So Julietta had to do this sales managers conference in a castle in Switzerland, and we were thinking, do you want to do a few PowerPoints? Not really. It's not that exciting for people. They don't really want to be there half the time. And so how could you use the castle and how could you use the people, the sales managers? So we came up with Monty Python and the Holy Grail. There's a scene in Monty Python and the Holy Grail where this English guy comes up to the French castle and he's like, let us in. We've got the Holy Grail. And the French guy shouts from the castle going, we've already got one. Right? So basically everybody who's selling something thinks they've got the Holy Grail. And everybody already thinks they've got the Holy Grail as a customer anyway. So the game then is, how do you get into the castle to play with them, or how do you get them to come out of the castle to play with you, right? Now that's just taking how do you use what's going on to create an interesting experience, rather than taking the pressure on yourself to teach people something, right? So you may come in and take all the chairs out of the room or something and have people standing around and get them to connect in a way, find something interesting in the worst screw up you made as a parent or whatever. And you'll hear from people learning from each other themes that you can bring the principles into. Right. So if you think about it as creating experiences with people that they already know, they already have some level of wisdom, they just don't have the principles as an explanation for it, then you'll already, things will emerge and you can trust that they will. And if you can relax enough and trust your own wisdom, you'll discern themes or areas where it makes sense to start connecting it. Right. This is the principle of mind at its finest, right? Is that just because we've the explanation of the principles doesn't mean that any more of them are in us than anybody else. They're in everybody all the time and they're working in everybody all the time. And if you have a level of trust in that, then you can play with it without so much pressure. That's the way I think about it, and I don't know if that helps, but
I think that was our major learning, right? Coming away from teaching by creating an experience as being part of that journey. Right? We also are very explicit about it in the beginning. We say, we're not your trainers, we're not your facilitators, nor your coaches. We are in this with you. We're just pointing.
We're looking the same as you at what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I was just going to say to Angelina, like in your specific case, Angelina, you already have that common ground with the people you're talking about there, right? So,
Yeah.
so you have a whole lot in common. But it sounds like you're saying you haven't told your story about your breakthrough, not your story that you have in common with them, but about your breakthrough, like you told us in this community a few weeks ago.
Yeah, very true, Greg. And up till now, I haven't, because I've always found within this community, it's much, much easier. And the understanding is people get the story and they get the insights and all of that. In the outer world, no. Okay. Terrified.
Well, just picking up on what Darragh said, you already have the words and the common ground from that with that audience. You might call it the outer world from this perspective, but it's not. It's the same, as you know. But so just using those words or using the common language that you already have with those people to maybe share briefly even what that breakthrough was and how it might help them. All you're doing is offering help to them.
It's you're learning two things at once. Like one is you're learning to facilitate a group, and the other is you're putting yourself under pressure to share the principles. Right, so that's actually quite a hard thing to do, because you ask people, about public speaking, and they're terrified of it.
Yeah, but if you saw Angelina speak a couple of weeks ago, you wouldn't be saying that to her.
And this is a safe and cuddly environment for you, because you know that everybody will have a level of understanding that you're illustrating the point about something impersonal, which is the principles, through something personal. But in that situation, it's personal thinking taking over. It's me as the facilitator. What will these people think of me with this story, and so on. So just take that off the table and go, how do I get them to share something interesting for them in a good feeling that I could then extract some themes from and relate to, So it's just a different craft. It's not like public speaking you're presenting or about you and your story. It's more about having an environment where they see something, and then you can point out the value and impact of what it is that they're seeing. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and you decide for yourself when your wisdom will help you be personal when you need to. Like Jules has a very profound personal story, which she shares with people at the right time in the program. And I've got lots of them as well. And when it'll just occur to you, So don't try and do it. Take the trying out. Do you know what I mean? Make it about them experiencing something and play with that, and then see what emerges, and you'll learn. You'll just keep learning.
Thanks.
Because you already have domain expertise. You're an expert parent, an expert carer. You've already seen a lot. So I couldn't teach what you're going to teach. I could do a business thing because I've got business experience, but I couldn't do the thing that you're doing.
You've also got great storytelling ability as well, Angelina. Like for judging from a few weeks back, really, really good. So.
Yeah, that's probably my comfort zone. You say, give me a microphone and I can talk all day long and tell the stories, and I get that. I know that. I mean, I don't need to go to public speaking school, but designing a workshop or a program. So I think my story sometimes seems very inspirational. People give me loads of compliments, but what I'm finding is that they're not seeing the universal in it. They're not seeing themselves in it and the potential and the possibility that's in their lives. And it's like it's a little missing link at the moment.
But that's a really good insight you have about that, Angelina, right? Because you want them to see the universal. So it's a learning curve around that. And you can still share your story, but it's about what they see, not about what you know. As a facilitator, and it's to cultivate that. And when they see something, then the value becomes clear, and then they make their own metrics. Back to Donald's question to go, we've loads of stories of that, And that's the craft. Like, that's the craft of it, which is different. To facilitate groups is different because there's a craft that goes along with it, which is different from sharing with fellow practitioners, because it's not and that's a learning curve,
Thanks, guys.
You're welcome. Did we answer the questions, Donald?
Hi, sorry for not being on video. I just wondered on the Angelina thing, I hope you don't mind me jumping in, Angelina, but the sense I get, it seems to me that you've kind of got a lot on that almost like you've got one shot at this, and if you don't get it right, you'll blow the opportunity. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's the sense I get.
Well, I suppose my second thing is how do I get the opportunity? Like, I know from the deep listening retreats here in Ireland this year, I know if I can get people in a room, I know what can be created. And recently I was asked to do a 2-day deep listening retreat, and as it turns out, it didn't happen. But I didn't have the words. Something like Eve Johnston said there a while ago, I didn't have the words to sell it to other people. So I know if they're in the room with me, I know something will happen. I know damn well if I go into the feeling, I connect with mind, I connect with them, magic will happen. So I don't have a lot on that. What I have a lot on is, how do I get them in the room?
Yeah.
And
That's probably my bigger question. How do we get people in the room for the experience in the first place?
And then it's like getting the right people in the room.
Mm.
Right? One conversation at a time is the way we do it. Right? It's like when people get curious, then they'll sign up for something if they want to. I'd say it's just about having conversations in a really grounded place and being curious. And then you'll find the language, or you'll find what's in it. And sometimes it's not for them, and be upfront and go, I don't think this is for you. You know, and some people will go, but yes, it is. And others will go, no, you're right. Yeah, it's not for me. And you just have to let go of the outcome. Just take yourself off the hook for it, because it's all learning anyway. We lots of people don't show up for us. Like once we tell them what they're getting in for, they go, all right, no, that's too scary for me. I'm not going there. Like, so and that's a good thing. So you have to kind of look at the people who aren't converting into turning up to something as, that's a good thing. We're getting closer to the right people in the room. Louise.
Hi, yeah, I suppose I was reflecting on my own journey of, so when I come around the principles first, so my background is healthcare. And when I come around the principles first, I did some programs, you know, kind of in my healthcare organization, went over to Scotland and did some in other healthcare organizations, you know, kind of pointing to the principles. But one of the turning points for me is when I kind of could see that it was my ego of wanting to do a really good principles program, so to speak. I went on and moved jobs and ended up in a world of quality improvement, leading quality improvement for our healthcare organization. And like yourselves, moved from I was handed over an in-person program, and then the pandemic hit. And I've just come into this job 5 minutes. So I had to, but actually it was just meeting people where they were at. So even though I never really branded it at all as 3 principles when I was doing the quality improvement training, that you're pointing to it all the time, you're taking the opportunities, you know, the ego has kind of gone away of, I need to do something here. And I suppose it's just taking that opportunity. And when I was hearing Angelina talking, I was thinking, you know, the opportunities come up over and over again. And it's kind of when they've got no fixed outcome, the conversations happen and it just presents itself.
And to be in service to what's needed for this person at the time. Yeah. I hired Chip Chipman as a mentor last year because I thought I was going to be made redundant. And he said he asked Sydney Banks, how do I get clients? He said, I didn't ask him, how do I get clients? So that was my hidden question, you know, because Sid asked me to move off Salt Spring and into Vancouver. And Sid said, listen, really listen. Serve the person in front of you with everything you have, and the rest takes care of itself. And I found that to be true. Sometimes the serving people is not the principles. It's something else.
Yeah.
But you can't help but the principles come true in your grounding anyway. So listen, serve the person in front of you, and the rest takes care of itself. That's how we operate. That's how that's really proven true for us.
Yeah, it's proven true for me personally as well, I'd have to say. Angelina, and yeah, great point, Louise. But Also, just a quick one on Angelina's story. It sounds like you might be trying to plan ahead too much as well, Angelina. Maybe step 2 and step 3 before you've taken step 1. And the other thing I learned is, like what Darragh said there, when you serve somebody, step 2 will just happen automatically, and step 3 will come. You don't have to put a plan in place. I found personally, it's a lot easier than I originally thought. And, just taking one action will lead to another one. You may not be able to see it ahead of time, but it will lead to it.
I'm conscious of time. We've gone over. So I would like to say thanks to Jules and Greg, and to Angelina for all the support, and to you guys for coming along and playing, and to whoever listens for the recording. Like, we are in service. We see the principles as something that can really be transformative in business. And if we can help with anything, you have our contact details. It's lovely. And we know most of you already. So, and those of you who don't, please connect. So,
please stand up. Thank you so much. That was great.
Thank you. Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.